At 18, I bought an empty parcel with no real intention to invest in real estate. And now it makes me passive income every month, plus it's 3x'd in its value because of this strategy no one talks about that we're going to be going over today. Hi there, my name is Tiffany, and if you're new here, welcome to the channel. This is what I like to call my real estate therapy session, where I tell you guys about my journey, what I'm learning as I'm learning how to invest, and how I did projects like the one that we're going to be talking about today, so you guys can take the blueprint and hopefully make it work for you. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty. This is my 2002 mobile home, but at first it wasn't a mobile home, it was just a plot of land which generally doesn't generate a lot of income. The strategy is a fairly simple concept, however, how I made the deal happen and the little details that went into it is what took this deal from a good one and turned it into a great one. Now, in order to start this off, we have to rewind to 18-year-old Tiffany, who stumbled across a TikTok video about some investors mentioning that they bought properties off of tax deed sales. Now, I could have bought any property just off the market for market value. However, with tax deed sales, you can usually find properties for either half the price or sometimes even less than that. And everyone knows that the saying goes, you make your money on the buy, not on the sell. In order to find these deals, you have to make sure that your state and your county actually offers them. So here's a reference in general just to see if your state does them, but sometimes it can go down to the county. So if you want to check out and see if your local area does them, you can check out the link in the description and it'll tell you exactly what states and counties do. Once you know that your state actually offers them, you obviously want to go through and see what's being offered, see the auction dates for them, and start doing your deal analysis. Now, I'm not going to get into that into this video because that can be a whole thing on its own. So if you guys want to see how I actually scout a good deal and see how much my max bid is going to be, make sure you leave a comment down below because I can definitely make a video on that. This is how I bought my parcel, and I found out that this is a really good way to get them for really affordable. However, you also have foreclosure auctions, you have off-market properties, and you could even find some that are for sale by owner that are willing to sell the property for a bargain. Now, something that's really important too before you actually select a parcel that you're going to be bidding on or buying is that it's actually zoned for mobile homes. So the best way to do this is to call up your county zoning department and see what codes that they use to describe what can be used for a potential mobile home development. Hope I said that right. But of course, the zoning codes can look different in every county, so you want to make sure that you know the exact one for yours and that you're buying a property that's actually eligible for all of this to be done. And lastly, I know you guys are getting really excited because these are really good tips and really good strategies, but there's something that you guys have to watch out for, which are liens on the properties. Now, because at a tax deed sale, properties are auctioned off by the government, any liens that are related to government entities typically follow that property even though it's being sold, which means that you as the new owner are now responsible for them. Typically, you can figure out if a property has liens on it by either calling the county or doing an official record search on the county, or you could even use a software like PropStream. They typically have that on there. Or if you don't want to do any of that, you can just call up a title company and see if they'll do one for you. I think they charge, but I'm not sure how much. Now, having this much land is great, but what if you added a house to it? You could add some instant equity to it, rent it out for a profit. The possibilities are really endless. Now, just because the possibilities are endless doesn't mean that they're all good ideas. For example, if I thought about building a house there, we would have dealt with contractors, hardcore permits, had to find licensed subcontractors, and a ton more things like finding materials, and it just seemed like way too big of a task for my first project. Now, the second idea would have been to have bought a new mobile home, which would have simplified some of the things. However, it would still be way too expensive, and for someone at 18 who didn't have any credit, could not have been a financeable purchase. Now, just because some concepts are harder than others doesn't mean that there's still an opportunity. And that leads us into my brilliant idea of buying a used mobile home to hopefully put it on the property and make the same thing happen, but like way cheaper. Why would I even buy a used mobile home? Well, they're a lot cheaper, half the price to even a quarter of the price of a new one. They're movable, and you can find them in relatively good condition that needs minor to small repairs. Now, the question everyone's gonna wanna know is, where do you actually find these mobile homes to buy? I bought mine off of Facebook Marketplace, but it was actually listed through a mobile home broker, which acts as a realtor to sell mobile homes. But I'm sure you could also find them on Craigslist. And another tip that she gave was to go to actual mobile home dealers and see if they're replacing any old mobile homes with new ones and ask if the seller would be willing to sell the old one. Now, of course, it's not as easy as just buying any used mobile home. You want to make sure that it's structurally sound and that it will actually sustain however far you're going to drive it onto your property, because it is going to be going about 70 miles an an hour down the highway, so you want to make sure that it could sustain those winds. Another thing to look for, particularly here in my town, really common is a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home. So you want to make sure that you're buying something that would be easily rentable or sellable and what the market comps are asking for. That's typically what you want to aim for when buying, but I found that 3.2 is kind of the sweet spot. And another thing that I would not do is buy a mobile home that's older than 1976, not only because it's almost 50 years old now, but because it's actually not even considered a mobile home. I think it's considered like a modular home. The terms changed in that year because of some law, and basically it kind of just messes everything up when you're trying to do financing, when you're trying to sell it. And another thing to be very careful of is the fact that these are vehicles until they're actually permanently put onto a property. So if you're buying some from somewhere, you want to make sure that it has the correct documentation, like the actual plate on the back of the mobile home from the manufacturer. It needs to have title documents just like a car would, and any other documentation that your states require in order to buy a vehicle. Now, the first step is obviously we need running water going to this mobile home. And in our neighborhood specifically, we're required to do our own well system, which costs about $5,000, but this is going to vary drastically from city to city. Or on the other hand, you have counties and neighborhoods that require you to hook up to actual utilities, which is a whole different story, and I've never gone through it. However, I'm sure that there are costs associated with that, so you want to make sure that you're prepared for it. Now, the next thing that you're going to have to worry about is your sewage or your septic system. Here in my neighborhood specifically, they allow you to do septic systems, which you have to do on your own, but it's a one-time cost and you don't have to pay any sewage fees afterwards. Or perhaps in your city or neighborhood, they actually require you to hook up to the actual city systems, which again is a whole different process, but either or of these need to be done, and they'll probably need to be specified on your permits, which we'll get into. Some counties require for a mobile home an actual permanent concrete foundation to put the mobile home on. However, here in my county, they allowed a clay sand mixture that hardens later on to become a more solid foundation. So we were able to do that and save a ton more money. Plus, it was a lot faster to schedule because it was readily available. Of course, you are going to have to clear out the parcel. I ended up spending about $2,000 to $3,000 to clear out a 0.22 acre parcel, but please keep in mind that we didn't really cut down many trees. We really just cleared out the brush and made sure that the lot was nice and smooth so we can start with the prep work. And if you're liking this video so far, make sure to leave a thumbs up so we know that you're enjoying this content, and hopefully you guys want to follow along for the rest of the journey. After you've bought the mobile home, you obviously need to get permits before you do anything, and it is going to feel a little bit overwhelming, so if you don't want to deal with it, most of the movers or builders will do it themselves. However, they will charge you a pretty penny, so if you can do it yourself, I would highly suggest it, but there's a lot of information in there that sometimes you won't know, and you'll have to ask them anyways, so do with that information what you will. I know we talked slightly about liens in the beginning. However, if you have any liens and you discovered them unfortunately by surprise like I did, so thankfully and coincidentally I had a lien and I had to pay it off before I actually did anything, but it actually ended up helping in the end, because when I was doing the permits here in our county specifically, the front door needs to be facing the road as like the entrance, but the lien was actually from a previous mobile home that was there that apparently burned down or something, so the county had to come and remove it. Long story, because it was a mobile home there previously, I actually got a replacement permit, so A, it was a lot cheaper, and B, I was able to put the door opening from the side because that's how the old one was coincidentally, and because mine was a single wide mobile home, it was really long and skinny, and the parcel wasn't that big, so there was only really one option in terms of fitting it in the property. Now, if you are going to get the permits yourself, you want to keep in mind that a lot of the hardcore stuff like the electrical, the plumbing, septic well, you do need to get licensed people to actually sign off on the permit, or else most times the county just won't accept it. I know this is going to be hard to hear, but moving the mobile home is almost going to be as much as the mobile home itself, and if you decide to get a double wide, it's going to be more than double the price because you have 2 trailers to now move. So make sure you just keep that in mind when you're actually purchasing the mobile home. Next off is that you want to make sure that the mover is licensed, and you can typically check this with the county. Plus, they'll probably ask for their license number when you actually go to pull the permits, so just make sure that they're actually qualified to be doing their job, because you don't want your mobile home to be broken on the way to your property. My next tip is that if they sell you a full package deal, that means the electrical, the plumbing, the septic, the well system, all of the hookups, make sure you either compare that to the quotes that you already got, or ask around and see if people think that it's expensive or not, because I ended up going the other route, which is basically subcontracting everyone to do each individual thing, and it ended up costing me a couple of grand more than me just hiring the mover to go ahead and do everything. Plus, it took like an additional 6 months, which was not a smart move, but you live and you learn. If you're not going to do the complete package, the one thing you do want your mover to include in the package is to anchor the mobile home down, and this is very important because it's one of the first things that the inspectors will look at when they actually come out and take a look at what's going on the property. To find an actual credible mobile home mover after all of that, my biggest suggestion is to look on Facebook Marketplace, ask around for recommendations, maybe ask a mobile home park owner and see who they used previously, or an actual mobile home dealer that has the people that work for them. I'm sure that they have a subcontractor that moves the mobile homes and anchors them. So you want to ask around and go based on a reference, because I just grabbed the first one off of Google, and let's just say that it was not a very pleasant experience. Thankfully, the house survived though, so everything is okay. Now we're gonna get into the exit strategy, which is one of my favorite parts. And if you're feeling very inspired by everything I already said, and you're like, yeah, girl, I'm gonna do this and like resell it and make a bunch of money, honestly, yay. However, there are a few buts. Number one is if you want to flip or resell the mobile home. So you did all of this, now you want to put it on the market. Essentially, after a mobile home has been moved more than once, so from the dealership to a property, from a property to another one, which is considered a used mobile home, most banks will not finance them, specifically single wides too. I have read that VA loans and probably non-QM loans will take something like this, but I think it's going to be very hard for a potential buyer to actually get financing for a deal like this. So unless you find a cash buyer, which is not that common, you're kind of out of luck in terms of reselling it. Now, not to say that it's impossible, but there are some hurdles to do that. Now, when you do buy these mobile homes, typically the sellers ask for cash, or sometimes I've seen them even do seller financing, but the bank will definitely not finance them. And lastly is renting, which is what I ended up doing because I really wanted to keep the mobile home, and honestly it's paid off, so it's just free passive income. And basically I just put it on the market, good old Zillow.com, and within like a month I found a tenant. If you are considering renting it, I just want to mention too that this strategy does blow the 1% rule right out of the water, because for example, my project and mobile home that I did that basically is this whole strategy, I was able to spend about $50,000 to complete the whole thing from A to Z. That does include renovations as well. And the market rents for something like that goes roughly $1,500 a month. So if you add that up, that's almost a 3% return on the rent compared to the purchase price, which is absolutely insane. You almost can't find those deals anymore. You just have to think out of the box, and honestly, sometimes it'll work out. To wrap everything up, if you want to do things the easy way, hire a realtor, buy a plot of land for market price, and buy a new mobile home, finance it, and kill all your profits. I will admit though, there are a few perks in terms of the exit strategies that we just mentioned. Yes, that is the easy way to go about it. However, if you do this strategy, you could really knock your returns out of the park just by adding these few extra steps. And that's all for today's therapy session. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and don't forget to grab the free checklist in the description, and I will see you guys next time.